Howdy folks, this is Big Sam. You might be wondering why we're taking a look at a bunch of rusty Mosin parts. This is actually a Mosin Nagant M91 parts kit, and as you can probably tell, it was in a fire of some kind. And I think this one may have actually been on the Titanic, judging by how bad it looks. Why do we even care about any of this today? Well, there's actually a couple important questions and issues that this raises, but I want to address the elephant in the room right here. Is this rear sight? So, if we take a closer look at this barrel here, this rear sight is actually what we would call an original rear sight. This is for the original M91 1891 cartridge. Now it used a bottlenose projectile, not the Spitzer cartridge that we're familiar with today. And this rear sight was removed from all rifles starting around 1909 when the new Spitzer round was introduced. Very few of these rear sights still survive today. So it's really fascinating that this still has it. Now, as we can see from the barrel markings, this rifle was made by the Tula factory in 1901, which would make this an M91 rifle. Now, why are we even bothering with this? Well, it may not be exactly why you think. You see, this was for sale, and I wanted to get this off of the market because there are some potentially nefarious shysters out there that will try to take a rear sight like this that was clearly in a fire, and they'll try to refinish it or make it look nice and then put it on a rifle to make it look original and correct and then sell it for thousands and thousands of dollars. Now here on the channel, we're more interested in the historical aspect of things and preserving history, as well as telling its story, over things like monetary value. So I'm glad we don't have to worry about someone doing that in this case. This is not something I'm going to be reselling at all. And it's going to make at least a nice display piece. Now don't worry, we'll be looking at a much nicer version of this rear sight in an upcoming video that was not in a fire, thankfully. But it's still neat for reference purposes. Okay, so at least we kind of know what we're looking at now. Now, why was this in a parts kit? Well, there's a few potential reasons. The first one is going to be, well, it was in a fire, right? So maybe he was maybe the guy committed insurance fraud that had this, right? Maybe he burned his own house down or something, and well, the insurance company or the government confiscated everything and mandated that this needs to be destroyed, which is why there's no receiver. Or quite simply, the insurance company is just trying to sell off all of the assets to make something, right? I mean, they have to stay in business as well. So a couple potential interesting reasons why this even exists. But again, it is unfortunate that it was in a fire. Strangely enough, I've seen actually 3 examples of a Mosin Nagant or a Mosin Nagant parts kit with the original rear sight that was in a fire within the last about 12 months, which is kind of strange. But it's unfortunate because here in America, we've had quite a lot of fires lately. It's been pretty dry around various parts of the country. These things happen. A lot of people will call that global warming until we get a massive amount of rainstorms, and then nobody can really say anything about it. So is the way that God intended the weather to be. It changes. But I digress. We want to now address the next elephant in the room here. Can this be salvaged at all? And this is a really common question that comes up anytime there's a gun that was clearly in a fire. Please, if you have a gun that was in a fire, do not shoot it. Whenever a rifle's in a fire, anytime metal's in a fire, the metallurgy is going to drastically change, especially depending on how hot the fire is. And if we tried to reassemble this rifle and reattach a receiver to this and tried to shoot it, could very well blow up and kill me. Don't really want to try that. I also want to make sure that nobody else tries that. Now, one of the things we could do here is find an original receiver and put this on and just set it on a wall for display purposes. The problem with that is, though, Big Sam could get hit by a bus tomorrow, and a loved one or somebody else that thereafter my death comes into control of my assets may either try to shoot this and they say, oh, that looks cool, or just sell it off to someone not really knowing what it is. And the person that buys this then goes and tries to shoot it, not knowing what it is, and then kills themselves in the process. Please be careful with these guns. In this case, we're just going to leave the barrel like it is. The barrel's toast. The fire that got so hot that it actually drooped. It's kind of hard to see, but if you look through the rifling, you can clearly see it's drooped. Kind of like you would have a machine gun barrel when you shoot it so much that it heats up and droops. It's kind of the same thing that happened here. Thankfully, this was not a machine gun. It's just a Mosin Nagant, or at least it used to be. So anything like this, the barrel cannot use. Any of the pressure-bearing parts, like the barrel, the receiver, which is gone, but the bolt especially, anything that bears pressure, the metallurgy is changed, it's useless. Do not attempt to use it in anything more than a display purpose. So all those parts we're not going to be able to use. Now, in the rear side I want to salvage. I want to make sure that no nefarious shysters out there try to resell it. Because this is a really fascinating piece. And it still has the slider, which is cool. Now we can take a closer look at it again here. One of the things you'll notice is, and I was in a fire, see this leaf spring right here? Well, the fire destroyed the spring tension of every spring in this rifle. So that spring does basically nothing now. But we can see we have our Tula factory marking there. And we have one right here on the slider as well. And this slider is just sort of, it slides about freely. It's mainly just pressure fitted. And so there's some friction on here because it's pretty tight on here. It used to be a lot tighter. Now it's just not so good. And we can see we have our original site markings in Arshins. Remember, this is Imperial Russia, before they adopted the metric system. Now, we could also probably try to salvage the front sight on this guy. So that might be something I'll take a look at. Might even be able to use it on a rifle. I'm not quite sure, but we'll find out. Now, the other parts I have here are things we can salvage, potentially. We're going to try. All right, this is the magazine body. All right, now, I don't know how well this is going to clean up, but the other nice thing is it has the original Sling Swivel, which is fairly uncommon to find. So that is not a pressure-bearing part, so we might be able to try to keep that. Another thing here is the cocking piece. This is not really pressure-bearing. I don't think I would try to use this, but one thing you'll notice here is it is numbered on the back, which is uncommon. So it'll be cool to have around just for display or for reference. And then we have our magazine follower. You see the spring. The bottom spring kind of still works. It's really lost a lot of its use, though. It's kind of unfortunate. And you can see our Tula factory marking right here. That's kind of cool. And it is numbered on the bottom, so the springs probably need to go. However, the floor plate we can still keep because it's numbered, and it'll be a fun reminder of this horrible thing that we've encountered here. So whenever you get a gun that was in a fire, you just need to be a little bit careful and understand what you're getting into. Again, please do not shoot it. It is extremely dangerous. And know that, you need to figure out ahead of time, are there parts that you can salvage, non-pressure bearing parts that you can salvage and that are worth salvaging. And this whole thing didn't cost very much money because it's basically scrap metal. It was worth it, though, just to make sure no one tries to resell this sight on an otherwise original rifle. So that being said, let's go ahead and get some of these parts soaking, and then once they've been soaking for a sufficient amount of time, we're going to see how well they actually clean up here. Alright, so we've been soaking for about 24 hours. Oh man, look at that. Doesn't get any better than that. I wish you could smell this, because it smells like, well, how do I put this? It smells like you shouldn't be smoking around these parts. Alright. Let's get these things out of here and take a closer look at them. Alright, so we've had a little bit of time for these guys to soak, and these parts aren't fully cleaned up, as you can see, but we kind of have a before and after. So the magazine body, the magazine follower here, and the cocking piece I haven't really done a whole lot to yet, and this is kind of what they look like. Now the rear sight, though, is really the only remotely interesting thing about this abundance of horrors that I have procured. And I have spent a little bit of time cleaning this up. So let's take a closer look at this guy here. Let me get my camera to focus. There we go. Okay. So, as you can see here, it looks a little bit better than that, all that rusty mess. A lot of the finish got baked off, I guess. It was yeeted, but it doesn't look that bad. It kind of looks like it's just ever so slightly bent. It's hard to say if it was like that before. You can see. Now we can see right here are two hammers, which is pretty cool. And if you're wondering how this works, see, it's sort of sliding. I'll show you here. Let me get my toothpick, and I'll show you. All right. So you see here on the inside, seems like there's this little spring. Or as we say in Kentucky, a sprang. We got a sprang right here. Seems like the idea is that this is supposed to provide tension. And the way that works is there's this little screw right here. And I think that screw is supposed to put tension on the spring, which in turn puts tension on this whole slider here. We can also see here, this is our volley sight. So normally, right, it's sitting on the rifle, and then this would be what you would look at. This would be your rear aperture here. But you could flip it up like that, and then this would be your volley sight. You could raise it, and here's your settings. It goes all the way up to, this would be 2,700 Arshin, or paces. That's pretty optimistic. At that point, you're pretty much wasting ammunition, but it is interesting nonetheless. This screw right here is our slider retainer. So see, it hits that, so it can't move off of it. And I don't know, maybe you're like me. I always wondered how they actually attached this slider in the first place. Well, the way they did it's pretty cool. So here's our rear sight aperture here. But see how we have these two notches on each side? They cut these notches. So what they did was, remember we had this retainer. Before they screwed this on, this would actually could just slide onto it here. And then once they slid it on, they just put this retaining screw on and called it a day. Very simple. Very simple. Not a bad design either. And again, we'll take a closer look at this sight and a nicer example in a future video. And we'll also compare it to something that's very closely related to on an entirely different gun that you may not even be aware of that this is related to. So look forward to that. But as you can see, this doesn't look the best. It's also not the worst. I think it could have turned out a lot worse. It's nice for reference purposes, if nothing else. And again, I'm glad we don't have to worry about somebody scalping this or trying to pass this off as an original, because we kind of know this has a shady past, to say the least. All right. So this turned out okay. Now, can the rest of this turn out okay? Well, that remains to be seen. Now, one of the things I'm interested in trying is we're actually going to try Evapo-Rust, because I've never tried it, and I think there's a lot of people who have questions about, does it actually work? What is it good for? What is it not good for? That type of thing. So we might try some Evapo-Rust, and we'll do a separate video talking about my thoughts on it. Because again, I'll never take any money from anyone about any product. If I think it's trash, I'll tell y'all. And if I think it's good, I'll tell y'all. I want to be someone you can actually trust their opinion of things on. So we'll try that out. And, you know, I tried to clean this guy up a little bit here. In the back, you can barely see the numbers here. It didn't match the gun. I believe there should be a maker's mark up here, and you can't really see anything. I mean, this is rough. I'm probably not going to do a whole lot with this. And that really begs the question of why are we even bothering looking at some of this stuff? Well, in the next follow-up video to this, I'm actually going to show you some potentially humorous, but you might actually enjoy it, alternate use cases for some of these parts. So stay tuned for that. Now, here's our floor plate, because I didn't look at that yet. This does match our gun, actually. And you can actually still see the numbers, which is cool. 36793. This one appears to be a Tula, which would make sense because it matches the rifle, which is a Tula. The emphasis on was. And again, here we can see our Tula hammer. My camera just doesn't want to focus today, but you saw that, so that's good. Now, one other thing you might be wondering at this point is, what about the barrel? Big Sam, I distinctly remember seeing a barrel at the very beginning in the intro of this video. What happened to that? Funny you should ask that. This is the barrel. Now, you might be wondering why some of it's missing. And that's a good question. You see, not the guy that's running for governor of Texas, but rather the barrel, how do I put this? It got yeeted. It basically turned into Play-Doh, at least the end of it did. I actually tried to salvage the front sight, and in doing so, it pretty much just turned to dust. It was pretty bad. The composition of the metal was compromised, to say the least. So there wasn't much we could do with it. And I was just going to throw it away. But then I said, you know what? Well, let's just take a grinder and keep some of it at least as a memoir. So here, this is the barrel, this is the part that screws into the receiver here. And there's our extractor groove. And here's our barrel markings. Again, this rifle that used to exist was made at the Tula factory in 1901. And as you can see, it's seen better days. It was cut up and in a fire. And for those of you that are, beating down your TVs and phones right now, no, I didn't destroy this, the fire did. This was just going to get thrown out anyway. So why not have fun with it? Now, it's kind of hard to see. Let's see if there's enough lighting. You can actually still see the groove. Yeah, that's right. There's at least about ½ an inch of rifling left. Actually take a round here and mostly put it in here. You can see the tip of the bullet there. This is not good. This is just bad things waiting to happen. Oh man, if you're like me, you're like 8 years old right now and you're thinking of all horrible things you could do with this. Now, you can't put this on a gun here in America right now. It would become what we would call an SBR, a short-barreled rifle. Any rifle in America that has a barrel of over 16 or less than 16 inches long, you got to go through extra paperwork and have to get a $200 tax stamp. which ironically is illegal because you can't tax a right. So I don't know exactly how they ever got away with that. But nonetheless, we comply by the law here, and that is the law. So even though it's illegal, again, I'm not a lawyer. Very, very interesting how gun laws work here in America. But you want to be careful to not just put this on a gun. Otherwise, you can go to prison. So you got to know what you're getting into. Now, again, this was in a fire. So the only way I would even shoot this was if you put this on a gun, stood very far away, and pulled the trigger with a very long string. If you're not sure what a string is, that's this, right? And stand way back and hopefully hide behind a tree and a rock or a building, maybe your neighbor's house or something like that. And hope it doesn't explode. Because again, from what I've seen, a lot of the metal on this gun turned into Play-Doh. Now, one of the weird things is that somehow whoever sold this actually managed to unscrew this from the receiver, which surprises me. I tried unscrewing this from the magazine. This just is totally seized, this screw right here. The fact that they were able to unscrew this from the barrel, I'm actually really impressed by. And again, this just has bad idea written all over it. Now, some of you might be wondering, that's just the dumbest thing ever. No one has ever done anything like that before. Actually, somebody has. Check out this picture. I do apologize if the picture you just saw procures nightmares in your sleep, but that is actually what we call an obres, and that actually did exist. People made things that looked just like that in World War I in the trenches. Kind of an interesting topic, which we're not really going to talk about today, but this barrel is pretty much identical to the one on that. I mean, apart from the fact that this was in a fire, but these are minor details, right? If you want Big Sam to pursue an NFA project and get a tax stamp and end up putting this on a rifle one day and creating an obres and shooting it from a string, go ahead and subscribe. Because if I get enough people interested in that, I will actually do it. But again, this is really... I would not just shoot this. I would be very far away shooting this. This is stupid. And rather entertaining. But that's what we like here on the channel. Very strange things related to Mosin Nagants. I mean, we could even get this rechambered in another caliber. And I'll show you why we would even consider that in another video. There's so many videos that we can have on this channel that I apologize. Sometimes it's a little overwhelming trying to figure out what content to film. But eventually, we will do our best to get to pretty much everything you could imagine that involves the Mosin Nagant. And today, we were led to something, well, rather horrible. But hopefully you got a kick out of this, and, you know, I think we did a decent job of salvaging, along with the next video, we did a decent job of salvaging a really unfortunate scenario. That, you know, this whole gun could have easily gotten thrown away, and while that may not have been the greatest travesty to ever occur, I'm glad we were able to at least save some things and make an interesting video to kind of walk through some of it with y'all. Again, the next video, we're actually going to find some interesting use cases for this, and no, not involving shooting this or putting it on a gun. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for watching. Again, if you like this sort of crazy kind of Mosin Nagant content, please consider subscribing. Please let me know if y'all have any prayer requests, and I'll see you next time.